Steering through violent waters. The leadership of Franklin Roosevelt. The true ability of a leader is tested not when one steers in calm waters, but in the most violent crash of waves in the deepest of seas, and keeps the boat afloat. Franklin Roosevelt was a senator, governor, presidential secretary, and the 32nd President of the United States, whose terms happened during the Great Depression and Second World War. A government position is in itself no easy task, more so when stormed with worldwide crises. Yet Franklin remarkably retired from his long career as a politician, having been the only American president to be elected 4 times, acclaimed for how he solved the crises of his time and how he reshaped the local scene and worldwide partnerships. Franklin was born into a wealthy family on January 30th, 1882 in Hyde Park, New York. His wealthy background gave him the privilege to study in elite schools such as Groton and Harvard, where he majored in history and economics. The summer he spent in Europe shaped his fluency in French and German, which came in handy in the latter part of his life as the future president. When he graduated from Harvard, he later attended law school. Although he did not get a degree, he nonetheless passed the bar exams. Franklin was no stranger to the world of politics. Theodore Roosevelt, who preceded him as the 26th President of the United States, was his 5th cousin after all. He took inspiration in entering politics from his cousin. Yet his political background goes as far back as the 1600s, wherein the Roosevelts already took part in the political scene of New Amsterdam, present-day New York City. Perhaps incest was no issue for the Roosevelts, or that they did not see the thing as incestuous, for Franklin married his distant cousin and Theodore's niece, Eleanor Roosevelt, in 1905. Eleanor would later be his partner not only in the household, but also in his political career, influencing him to pass policies that are feminist in nature, such as the appointment of women in federal posts. Franklin entered politics in 1910 when he was elected as Senator of New York State under the Democratic Party. Franklin was essentially a reformist, even in his early political career. During his term as a senator, he spent his time trying to undermine the influence of white ethnic leaders, in particular, the Irish Tammany Hall leaders. The Tammany Hall was a New York political power since the late 1700s and was branded for corruption, cronyism, and graft. In his pursuit, Franklin successfully rallied for the defeat of the Tammany candidate in securing a seat in the New York Senate and eventually weakened their power permanently. Franklin served as an assistant secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson before contracting an illness that caused his paralysis from the waist down. Although the diagnosis at the time was polio, recent investigations found that it may have been something else. In the years that followed, he sought a cure and had therapy in Warm Springs, Georgia, in hopes of being healed from the spring's mineral waters, which he ended up purchasing to establish a rehabilitation center for polio patients like him. However, it was evident that he could never walk again. Despite his fears, it certainly did not end his political career. Franklin became the governor of New York in 1929, despite some of the people's doubts about his capacity to be. Like an awaiting storm, he was immediately met with an economic depression. Then President Herbert Hoover confronted the problem by relying on market economics, leaving the economy to recover by itself. However, Franklin proposed a relatively new idea, which involved government intervention. As governor, he established social programs that sought to ease poverty and stimulate the economy, such as building an unemployment relief agency and passing a pension bill for old-age persons. However, this ended in a massive budget deficit for the state. Soon, Franklin became nominated as a presidential candidate for the Democrats, seeing him as a banner of change. The way he accepted his nomination cemented his label, for he broke the years-long tradition of only accepting it in writing. He flew to Chicago, faced the convention, and made a remarkable promise. I pledge to you, I pledge to myself, to a new deal for the American people. Soon, Franklin emerged victorious in his presidential run.
Franklin D. Roosevelt, having received more than 2/3 of all the delegates voting, I proclaim him the nominee of this convention for President of the United States.
He made history as the first Democrat in years who won a majority popular vote, which was a precursor to the eventual shift in who claimed the majority in the House, favoring the Democrats. The Depression was already becoming worse. His first 100 days hallmarked his New Deal policy. It sought to address the problems brought by the Great Depression, such as unemployment, bank failures, and the crashing economy. He established the Civilian Conservation Corps, giving employment to men aged 18 to 25 in the environment sector. The Federal Emergency Relief Act, giving grants to states, allowing them to stimulate their respective economies, and the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, also known as the AAA, which sought to address the Depression by raising market prices and curtailing farm production. Despite Supreme Court opposition to his New Deal policy, Franklin was re-elected for second and third terms, which were met with a world war. When the Second World War was still at its lukewarm stage, the United States was initially neutral. Eventually, when war was already ravaging Europe, this neutrality shifted and Franklin signed the Lend-Lease Act, allowing him to give any nation arms so long as it is of national interest. This made the US support Britain without ever formally entering the war. This changed when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, prompting Franklin to declare war on Japan.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
This also led to his eventual alliance with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin, forming the Allies, which consists of major powers, the United States of America, Great Britain and its Commonwealth, and the Soviet Union with the common goal of defeating the Axis powers. Their alliance became the foundation for the formation of the United Nations, whose goal is to establish an international peacekeeping organization. A constant battle against a massive economic depression and a devastating world war marked Franklin's political career. Nonetheless, Franklin kept the boat afloat and even found an island right at the end, the prospect for future international cooperation and peace, abandoning the era of destructive world wars. His whole career was his legacy, for it showed the world what he truly was, a leader, notwithstanding all its accompanying imperfections. Thank you for listening. In case you didn't know, hitting the like button helps the channel quite a bit. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can join me again next time as we look into the life of other historical figures that shaped the world as we know it.